Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another installment of Cognitive Dissidents, our monthly roundtable show with me, Mike, of the Parallel Systems Broadcast and Parallel Mike Podcast.
I'm Monica Perez from the Monica Perez Show.
And Jorge from Geopolitics and Empire.
Well, welcome back, both. It's really nice to see you. And yeah, we've got plenty to talk about tonight. We're not going to run out of ideas. We finally made it to the election, and Trump has been officially declared the winner without any major setbacks, no October surprises, which was interesting. And I'm looking forward to getting both of your takes on this one. You are both American citizens, so I'd love to find out really just what the general mood's been in the last, let's say, 48 hours, in the last few days, and particularly today. So I'll begin with you, Monica, because you are over there in the US, and then we'll go to you, Jorge. So, Monica, how are things in the US, and what's the vibe like over there?
Well, there's definitely an air of euphoria that is so it's so separated here, left and right. And so I was listening to Fox this morning, which is the kind of Republican station, and they had a lot of guests on. And the constant theme, and this was also true during the election, I won't go off on a tangent until you want to talk about the run up, but it is really coming through that they feel like this is like a divine moment. There's definitely a lot of like, this was God's answer. We are on the right track now. God has saved this country. There's euphoria in the markets. You can probably speak to that better than I can, Mike, but there seems to be some irrational exuberance in the markets. And then on the side of like CNN and the left stuff, it seems to me like nobody cried this time, but I feel like there's a kind of shock that people didn't realize that Kamala was going to lose. Whereas I'm terrible at predicting these things, but there were a couple of things that I saw that prepared me for like, this is where it was going to go. One was the betting. So you're allowed to bet on presidential elections. So I was looking at UK betting where Americans can't bet. So it isn't like wishful thinking. And consistently they had Trump winning. The odds were in his favor. But here the polls, they kept telling us that the polls were 50-50 dead heat, but I didn't really believe that. And they also, there was so much of the religious, there was just so much of a push from like Joe Rogan endorsed, Archbishop Vigano endorsed him. Even Ron Paul seemed to endorse him at the end. So then I felt like they're serious about getting the actual vote out as well as making it seem plausible. So like, I actually think it may have been, he really legitimately won the popular and the electoral. But I think the left is a little bit reeling. Before the election, I remember people saying, if Trump wins, it's Armageddon. And while I actually do fear the World War III acceleration that I think is coming in the Middle East from this, that's not what people were worried about. They're worried about, I think, like fascism, hate, homophobia, like that kind of stuff that they're worried about. Totally different from the things that I'm concerned about, but I feel like there's a shock.
Yeah, I think you picked up on some of the really important stuff, so we'll draw some of that out. But before we do that, Jorge, what about you, buddy? How's it going in Mexico? How's your family and friends in the US responding to this? Is it different to Monica, or is it pretty muted over there in Mexico in terms of the election?
It's just another day here in Mexico. Sunny day, life goes on as usual. And I was actually thinking this morning that I kind of, I in some ways, whatever, we'll talk about this, I feel like the deep state still won under Trump, but it is sort of a relief where at least we don't have to deal with as much of the woke madness. And I was just thinking that I don't think it's good to get so caught up and hyped up in politics, because I keep going back to this. It's almost like a religious cult, and it's just like, okay, we got this president, let's get on with life. Why do I have to daily be thinking about, in an idolatrous way, this person or that person who's going to save me? That's religious. And I'm like, I don't think this is good. And America, by far more than other countries, is much more caught up in this sort of religious, political, civil religion fervor than other countries. Most countries is just like, okay, you just live your life. But I did have a call with someone that I know in the U.S. yesterday, and they were telling me, I was shocked, I didn't know this, that where they work, it's so woke. And so this person is Catholic, and they have to keep their mouth shut because the workforce, like all they talk about is woke, LGBT, Kamala Harris, Trump is crazy. They are forced to put the pronouns in their email sign-offs, and I can't imagine working in a place like that. But hey, by the way, finally the news: Kamala concedes right now. So Kamala has finally conceded, and I think I may have mentioned this on AM Wake Up yesterday with Steve Poikonen that my view was we have different scenarios, but I felt that Trump was going to be put in. Remember, I think we've talked about this in months past, that there was going to be this Gnostic New Age theosophy-backed Trump coming back into power, which has happened. Tucker and Alex Jones talking about demons. And I did write in my Substack on Monday for paid subscribers, my analysis that, what did I write? I said that my guess is that Trump wins and civil unrest ensues, although we might get Trump without major civil unrest. And I had told Steve yesterday that I think we might see a smooth transition into Trump. And then, of course, the other scenario that I did say was they might put in Kamala, and then all hell, breaks loose, and that's not what we got. So
I have so many responses to that, Mike, but I don't want to derail our lovely round table.
No, please jump in. Yeah, I've got plenty to say too, so I'll hand it to you first.
Okay, I'm going to go bottoms up from your comments. First of all, people were anticipating some unrest and that the jury wouldn't be in or the vote wouldn't be in by the end of the day. And then and I totally felt that way too. But then this morning it's like we're always playing the last, reliving the last battle. They're much more creative than that. However, they're not so creative that they don't draw on previous patterns and archetypes. So what I actually think, and I'm trying not to be negative, and I have a viewer comment I want to bring towards the end of the show about the balance between being negative and being hopeful and being realistic. But I actually think that a likely scenario is he brings that Trump, who has said that he wants to be, decisive or fast or whatever in support of Israel in the Middle East, and that war is expanding. So I don't know what that means to Iran and everything. That you do that, and it's an unpopular war. And I was thinking, and justifiably so. And I was thinking, why do they keep giving pro-Palestinian protests oxygen? I've been saying this for a year now. I was like, why? And now I think that because if Trump accelerates, those people who are on the left, it will, or so far, most of them, it could ignite a level of civil unrest in the entire Western world in the same magnitude, paradigm shifting way as Vietnam in the 60s. So I feel like that's not the civil unrest we're getting around the election, that we're being teed up for, and not even a civil war, but for that scenario. As far as going to work and having to keep your mouth shut, I have to say, my son goes to public schools. He's the one who has Down syndrome. He's older. He's 22, but he's still in like the school system. And it's California. They're very Democrat, and he falls for it. And he's like, I'm going to vote for, Biden's my president, whatever. I don't really care because in California, your vote basically doesn't count. But last night when they were talking a lot about abortion, he has Down syndrome, so he's sensitive to that. And he said, oh my gosh, I'm a Republican. I'm like, yeah, whatever you want to be, but do not tell anyone at school. Like, do not go in there and say that at school. Like, you will be penalized. And he like solemnly accepted that. And then the last thing I will say is one thing that disturbed me goes right with what I opened with is that while I was listening to Fox, and they were talking about all the religion, all the spirituality that was being brought to the table here. The host kept saying, but the color isn't black or white. The color is green. And it's not the environment on Fox, it's money. And she was saying it's all about money. People need to put groceries on their table. Then there are commercials for like Bible health care and all of that. And I thought, the money changers are in the temple. Like it is in the same mouth of like, this guy is our savior because he's going to bring down inflation, which of course having tariffs is not going to bring down inflation. But the fact that in their mouths, those two words together, and they were just like, he's, sent from God to improve the economy kind of thing, just edit a couple of sentences out and that's what you've got. And I thought it's idolatry.
Yeah, it is. It is. For me as an outsider looking in, I'd say it's probably the weirdest and most, at the same time, quintessentially American election I've ever seen. It was so weird, but then it had this big Hollywood vibe to it. And I would say Trump's campaign especially, you had the Hollywood assassination attempts, of course, which we've all discussed. That's actually what led us to creating the Cognitive Dissidents. Then we had him the day after going to a Bitcoin conference, which just imagine that you had an assassination attempt, then you're at a big Bitcoin conference. And then what else did we have? He was working at McDonald's. Then he was on the most popular podcast in the world. So lots of twists and turns on his side. RFK Jr. jumping into it. And then also what you said, Havoy, this whole deification of him and this religious element that was infused. And all of these people came from the woodwork, like Russell Brand and Jordan Peterson, and then they were part of it too. So his campaign was, I would say it was almost foot perfect or picture perfect, not perfect, however you want to say it. Like he never put a foot wrong. It was perfect. And it happened in just 3 months, which is kind of amazing when you think about it, that transformation and to have all of these events lined up. And then on the other side of it, you had Kamala Harris, which I would say, and I'd love to get your guys' take on this. Like it looks to me like the worst and most hollow campaign that there's probably ever been. Like it feels like it was a complete non-entity. Almost like even she knew she was just there for a participation trophy. Like even she didn't look like she wanted the job or believed in it. But I would say the weirdest part of it all, and there's many contenders for that, was probably the religious side of it. So Havoy, I'm going to throw it to you because I know this is something you've been talking about for a long time. And it's all happening, right? The new age, deification, cosmic Christ, it's coming at us fast.
Yeah, you mind if I throw up? I had a bunch of clips that I wanted to run through just real quick. So I'll share my screen. And that includes some of this. So this is sort of my download from today. We're going to go to, let's see, share with sound, I think. Yes. All right. Here we go. You can see my screen, yes? Yeah?
Yep.
So that was for my paid subscribers analysis. I like Jeffrey Tucker's comment where he said he's lost trust even in voting. But, Kamala, it says she finally conceded, congratulated Trump. So I think that puts to rest. No, there were still fears that people would say, for days, weeks going forward, months, the Democrats will. I was expecting we might get a surprise where they're going to say, oh, look, the vote counts show something else, right? So it seems like we're not even going to get that. So this was just it's so weird because what we went through last time, it's like there was a complete stand down. And Canadian Prepper made a good comment. He said, what happened to the all-seeing deep state system is rigged voter fraud thing? Could it be that the deep state still won? As for dejected Democrats, admit that some of your policies are stupid and this beatdown is exactly what you needed to find your bearings. But I agree with him that the deep state won and they applied a different strategy this time. And it was like, hey, we're not going to do any of that stuff. Because if you notice, every cycle, whether it's the election cycle or the false flag cycle, it seems like they can't reuse the same thing, right? 9/11, COVID 9/11. What's next? You had a thought on that, Monica?
They might just want a strong, unequivocal mandate because of what they're about to do with it.
Yeah, I think. And then this gets to some of the stuff that I'm talking about. So it says DOJ moving to wind down Trump criminal cases before he takes office.
Wow, I didn't see that.
So
wow.
They've been evaluating how to wind down the 2 federal criminal cases against Trump before he takes office to comply with longstanding department policy that a sitting president can't be prosecuted. So again, it's kind of what we're saying. Everything is winding down. It's too perfect. It's too good to be true. And then the other things I was mentioning with Steve Poikonen the other day, like the fact that Alex Jones's court case is wrapping up and he's conveniently being able to switch away from remake himself, be reborn. And then there was another example I can't think of recently, but then you had just some of the comments you're seeing. People say, I've never voted Republican in my life before yesterday. Nobody in my family has either. I raised money for Hillary, voted for Biden. I even joined anti-Trump protests 8 years ago. I'm a data point. And then this comment you guys maybe have seen. Let's listen. Scott Jennings. So again, I think all of us doubt the whole Trump thing, but these are some basic truths, I think.
He's won the national popular vote for the first time for a Republican, for the first time since 2004. This is a big deal. This isn't backing into the office. This is a mandate to do what you said you were going to do. Get the economy working again for regular working class Americans, fix immigration, try to get crime under control, try to reduce the chaos in the world. This is a mandate from the American people to do that. I think I'm interpreting the results tonight as the revenge of just the regular old working class American, the anonymous American who has been crushed, insulted, condescended to. They're not garbage. They're not Nazis. They're just regular people who get up and go to work every day and are trying to make a better life for their kids, and they feel like they have been told to just shut up when they have complained about the things that are hurting them in their own lives. I also feel like this election, as we sit here and pour over this tonight, is something of an indictment of the political information complex. I mean, we've been sitting around here for the last couple of weeks, and the story that was portrayed was not true. I mean, we were told Puerto Rico was going to change the election. Liz Cheney, Nikki Haley voters, women lying to their husbands. Before that, it was Tim Walz and the camo hats. Night after night after night, we were told all these things and gimmicks were going to somehow push Harris over the line, and we were just ignoring the fundamentals. Inflation, people feeling like that they were barely able to tread water at best. That was the fundamentals of the election. And so I think that both parties should always look at the results of an election and figure out what went right and what went wrong. But I think for all of us who cover elections and talk about elections and do this on a day-to-day basis, we have to figure out how to understand, talk to, and listen to the half of the country that rose up tonight and said, we've had enough.
And just real quick, Mitch McConnell. Again, you're seeing everyone just point out the obvious. It's so smooth. Here's Mitch McConnell.
Senator, looking at the results from last night, what do you take away from the mood of the country, where it is now, where it is headed, and how it lands according to your expectations?
Well, if you're looking for a simple answer, I think it was a referendum on the current administration, in part. People were just not happy with this administration, and the Democratic nominee obviously was a part of it.
So there's that, and then in Germany, did you guys see this? Zeit Online published FUCK as their title. So the Germans are like FUCK. So I've got more, but I'll stop there for some of your thoughts, maybe.
Yeah. I don't know where to start with it all because, I don't know who it was that was in that first video because I'm not too clued up on the politicians in America. But, he sounded very convincing. And if I was watching that stuff day in, day out, and I wasn't somebody who'd maybe done a lot of research into these things over the past, 20 plus years, it's really convincing. And you actually feel like, yeah, poor Americans, they are hurting. Inflation is high. And the working class have been absolutely crushed over the past 4 years and just continuously gaslighted. So I totally get why there's a lot of hope for Trump and why people would want to suspend their disbelief and maybe ignore some of the obvious red flags, like the fact that, Israel are completely pro-Trump. He is, in their eyes, the most Jewish president they've ever had. That's what they call him. And I think it was Netanyahu himself who said he's the best friend of Israel. And you pointed out last month, Monica, on the show that he was talking about blowing up nuclear facilities in Iran, which we'll get to tonight for sure. So I could imagine why people would sweep all that to one side. They'd sweep aside Operation Warp Speed, that's one thing that is tough for me as somebody who tries to be critical, is to see lots of people who are supposedly, I would say, in the alternative medium, supposedly being honest, who have just completely ignored some of the facts recently. I saw somebody saying it was Kamala's fault that Americans are dying from the vaccine. And I'm like, wait a minute. I'm like, this is the guy who did Operation Warp Speed, and he was still in 2021 defending the vaccines, even when the CDC tried to take the Johnson & Johnson vaccine offline. He was the one who came out and said, no, that's the wrong decision. And of course, his best friends are really good friends with Woody Johnson, who is heir to the Johnson & Johnson empire. In fact, he was the ambassador to Great Britain in Trump's administration. So people are conveniently forgetting all of this. That they're completely forgetting all of this. He was defending the vaccine and saying it was the wrong decision to take it out of usage. So that has been hard for me, because I'm like, okay, guys, I get it. Kamala sucks. And if you're going to choose a character, you would totally choose Trump over Kamala. But you have to be honest with yourselves too, that this is probably not going to be for you. It's going to be for Israel. Like, let's put it this way. Do either of you guys think that Trump would be in if he wasn't Israel's best friend? Would we be having this conversation now? That's a good question to ask. Monica?
That was the only reason I thought I was confident, or I'm always terrible at predicting the outcome of these things. I feel like they're script writers, and just reading the tea leaves isn't good enough because there's a plan. I did see the polls. I did notice the push, but ultimately I felt that he was the deep state choice, because I felt like he would be unconstrained by party concerns. Like, Democrats still have a claim to legitimacy. They say that, they still make a claim to legitimacy as a party. I'm not saying they have that claim, but they make a claim like that. The Republicans do not own Trump. So he could come out and be extremely rogue, extremely aggressive in persecuting a war, and it would seem like he was doing it himself, that the party wouldn't necessarily bring down the party. So yes, I felt like that was the main reason that he was going to be the chosen one.
Yeah, that's the way I saw it. That's when people ask me what's my take, and I said, well, you can't really put Kamala in. Like, how can you put her in? Because her own voters would never allow her to support a war between Israel and Iran and expanding that. So she's absolutely useless, whereas Trump is extremely useful, because he'll at least get a significant amount of the conservative right to go along with it, particularly now with all of the idolatry. So he is the most powerful candidate. And this is why I was listening to you speak on a show this morning, Monica, in preparation for this. I wanted to see what your most recent thoughts was. And you mentioned that the deep state candidate was Trump because of that reason. Like Kamala would have sucked as a deep state candidate because she's not really got any power, particularly with the Israel thing. And just going back to your previous points, Havoy, when you mentioned about how quick they got this one through the door, for me, I thought that was probably to do with the really weak economy and the worries around recession and the stock market particularly is so fragile that they wanted to reassure those markets as quick as possible. Don't worry, guys. Trump's in, and then that's obviously, we've seen that today with the all-time highs, Bitcoin's up, dollars up. And I don't think they could afford to have too much anxiety around who's getting in. So I'm sure the media will now play that game, but they wanted an official statement. Trump's in, just to calm those market fears, because I think he's inheriting a really bad economy, which, we can maybe talk a bit more about. But Havoy, it feels like you've disappeared. Can you see Havoy's face, Monica?
Yes, I can.
Oh, okay, so it's crashed at my end, Havoy, so I can't see your face. But I'll hand it to you, Havoy. Any more to add on that front?
Yeah, let me just go through some more of my stuff that I have here. Going back to sharing my screen and on the economy, as you mentioned, Ambrose Evans Pritchard just published Gold's Mystery Rally is a forewarning of fiscal ruin and global dystopia. My favorite phrase that I've been using since the 2000 teens. And he says surge in demand could signal that the West's adversaries are building their war chest. So it's kind of speaking to what you're saying, Mike, that all is not peachy. This is this euphoria of today. But let's give it some time, right? And see what's going to happen on the economic front, on the war front. I think, Monica, maybe later you can bring this up. People have been posting how the what is this, the presidential election popular vote, Democrats versus Republicans. And you see that, 2012, 2016, the Democrats had the upper hand. 2020, it doubled Democratic participation and Republicans rise. And now it's back to where it was before. So it's like 2020 was the anomaly. And it does seem that organically Republicans voted, had the bigger popular vote. And I thought we just should show a few clips just for fun. And this is the part that does make me feel good. I didn't vote for Trump. I didn't vote. I'm done with voting. I think Trump is a deep state man. But this still makes you feel good, doesn't it? This is a guy says, here's a woke liberal globalist lamenting Kamala's lost and saying he'll be back 2028.
It is not over for Kamala. And all of you celebrating a Trump victory before the votes are even fully counted, may I remind you that a lot can change at the last minute. And even if we do fail to win the presidency for Kamala, after all the work I've done for white dudes for Kamala over the last few months, we will return in 2028. Kamala 2028 will be the greatest political comeback the world has ever seen, not just America, but the world. And I firmly believe that Kamala is still the best person in the whole of the United States to be the president of this country. And if we band together now, if we pull back some of those white dudes who went for Trump this time, by growing the White Dudes for Harris campaign, we can make a permanent change. We can put the MAGA crowd away once and for all. And I'm dispirited. I am dispirited by what has happened, but we can't just give up. We can't just stop now. It's so close. It was so close. There's just so much hate in this country. So much hate and misinformation from Elon. And we've got to fight back. We've got to fight back. Kamala 2028. We're coming back.
Okay, I'm realizing now I think that is a parody, but still, it's still funny.
Well, he's not. He doesn't have real tears, so he's either faking or he's joking.
But this next one I think is not.
But the fact that you can't tell the difference between parody and reality is where we are for sure.
No, that's where I'm sure there are real people out there like that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Here's this lady lamenting in her car.
I'm sorry. No. Why?
See, that seems real.
Yeah.
Why? Do you really hate me that bad? I'm sorry. No.
So that was real.
That seems like a genuine reaction. Like, I think people feel that way.
Yeah, there's many more clips. People
They can't accept it.
Yeah, and then real quick, Ian Grillo, who he's been on Rogan. I've had him on my podcast. He's down in Mexico. He says what Trump means for Mexico. Trump's victory owed much to concerns over the border. He'll pressure Sheinbaum to use the Mexican army more consistently against migrants, and U.S. military strikes against cartels are a real possibility.
Oh yeah.
So that's interesting just to think about for the Mexico context. And I'm even talking to Mexicans like, we're so fed up with the cartels, and I'm like, I'm the last person you'll get for foreign American intervention anywhere. I wouldn't even want them in Mexico, but it's so absurdly ridiculous what the cartels are doing in Mexico. It's just like at this point, I honestly wouldn't be against USA coming in to go against cartels. Seriously, like
you would not.
No, I'm like do something because they're literally left and right chopping people's heads off, extorting small business owners. People that I know. There's people that I know whose siblings are on the run from narcos. They're kidnapping people in town here.
What if they lifted the total gun ban for law-abiding citizens? Would that help?
I mean, that'd be awesome, but I don't think communist Mexico will ever do that. What was the latest story? In a hospital, like cartels just walked into a hospital, shot a guy in his hospital bed, killed cops, and it just it's devolving into total lawlessness. So I'm at the point like, look, it's that bad. It's that bad.
What do you think of Sheinbaum?
I think I'll stop the share here, but I think I've said this before. I think it doesn't matter whether it was Sheinbaum or any other two other options because it's almost similar to what in the U.S. because
they're all bought and paid for.
politicians are not running the show anymore. We are in this global
Agreed.
public-private fascist partnership where in Mexico, Agenda 2030 is deployed. BlackRock is running it. Rockefeller Foundation is running Mexico.
Yeah.
McKinsey Consulting, the plethora of United Nations agencies. So Scheinbaum is just the manager, right?
There was in that 2010 Rockefeller Foundation futurism scenario that had the 4 different things and everybody was focusing on lockstep, where, do you remember the thing I'm talking about? There were 4, and one predicted the COVID thing. There was a different one that was more, I think, more telling, hack attack or lockstep, which one of the two, that said governments would really lose power and the foundations would actually be the de facto world government. And that, what you just said, made me think, and I thought that was the thing that was happening.
It's the same. It's the same for America. You know, Derek Bros. I liked his tweet. I just shared it. What did he say? He said, "Where is it?" I retweet. He says somewhere right now, Peter Thiel is celebrating. He put a president and the VP in the White House. The Bilderberg Group must be pretty happy about this. Of course, the truth is the predator class was going to be happy regardless of which puppet was in.
Can I make a couple of responses to some of the things you said? Is that okay, Mike? I first of all, I remember they rectified some problematic voting law in Georgia fairly recently, and people, you know, it was like a way of like, you know, this is great. What do you think about this? They're not going to be able to steal the vote. And I said, well, what I think about it is they want Trump to win. So this idea of the mandate, the popular vote, because you had shown that chart of the popular vote finally for the Republicans is up. I feel like that was the goal, and it was orchestrated to be that way. And that was an example of something I think contributed to that. But one thing from what both of you were saying and what your very first clip, when that guy was like, people are worried about inflation, it just occurred to me, they probably, normally the second term of a president, you know, no holds barred. They get the deep state agenda through. Everyone's always disappointed in the guy. You know, by then he's losing his marbles, or he lost his way, or he came under pressure, or whatever. This is going to be Trump's second term. Why wasn't it consecutive? Why didn't he push it then? And I'm thinking Biden is being held responsible for the inflation, but Trump's deficits were insane. You know, the COVID deficits were in the like $5 trillion range, if I'm not mistaken. And he
increased the national debt by 40%. So it's a pretty big one.
And it was super huge to start out with. And because it's a debt-based currency, if you're going to shovel coal into or try to fill that hole in, it was, and of course, I thought the whole COVID thing from the beginning was a way to reset the interest rates and everything, because they had, a de facto debt collapse that they'd been just kicking the can. And COVID was a way to justify printing all that money. Borrowing money and printing money are basically the same around here. But that's inflationary. It was intentionally inflationary. And if Trump had been overseeing the consequences of the policies that took place under his administration, he would be blamed by inflation. But there's clear, do you agree with this or not agree? I know, Mike, this is like in your wheelhouse for sure, but that it's just a lagging, inflation is a lagging phenomenon.
Yeah, and you can't really blame Biden for the inflation. Obviously, what they did for COVID, it was the same across the world. Like everyone's had that inflation.
And both parties,
yeah, on both sides. So it makes no difference on that front. But yeah, that's one of the things that I think people are really banking on with Trump, is that is going to firstly somehow fix the economy. And I don't know if you guys look at the US jobs numbers, but they've really been fudging the books over the past 6 months. So I'll just, for listeners, over the last 2 jobs reports, the Department of Labor, they've revised numbers down by 112,000 jobs. So essentially, the original numbers that they gave were incorrect. So from September's figures, there was 254,000 jobs. They slashed it down to 223. But look at this. This is from August. A drop from 159,000 jobs to just 78,000. So an 81,000 revision downwards. And then over the last year, this has been nearly 1 million jobs revised. So they've been cooking the books quite a lot. And it's the same with the GDP numbers. And if you go back to, say, 2008, they were cooking the books right up until 2010, which is when they only first finally admitted that they were in deep recession in 2008. But it took till 2010 for them to admit that. So I think we're in a similar situation now. And I think Trump's going to inherit a really bad economy. And he said in his victory speech, or at least the one that I've seen thus far, he said that we're going to cut taxes and we're going to pay back the debt. And I was like, no, I don't think you are. I don't think you are. If you do, then it'll be a serious depression. And I don't understand how you pay back the debt and cut taxes at the same time. So, yeah, I think he's promised too much on that front. And I think, unfortunately, the way out of that, historically speaking, the way out of a depression is war, right? That's what you do. You go to war. So all of this kind of links together in a really horrible way. And yeah, I think we've got some tough times ahead, unfortunately. And I do think we're seeing today Wall Street respond enthusiastically. We've got an all-time high in the stock market. Bitcoin's up, of course, because people think Trump is going to be pro-Bitcoin. But in terms of the real economy, I don't think that's going to be fixed. And like you said, Monica, in terms of blaming the last administration, and listen, I hated that administration. They were pathetic. But yeah, you can't blame them for the inflation either, because we've all got that inflation. And, in Poland, we had a right-wing government. In England, we had left. So on both sides of the divide across the world, we had inflation. And I don't see that stopping. And this is one of my few things that I can say. It doesn't matter who you put in the White House. 100%, the debt's going up. No doubt about it.
And they just said, the CNBC says Bitcoin could reach 100,000 before the presidential inauguration. And if you don't mind, just again, going back to my share screen with some more clips here. Someone posted, so this was funny. I think this is from, I forget which movie this is, maybe a Big Short. They say Pfizer's headquarters right now, after realizing RFK Jr. will soon control the public health agencies.
Burn it off. Come on. Burn Get a card over here.
So again, it goes back to what you're saying, Mike, where it sounds nice, like it's funny, but my comment was, I have no hopes whatsoever that anything will happen to Pfizer. And I've read, I'm abroad here in Mexico. I'm an American expat. I have to pay. I still pay income taxes to America. Like I'm forced to. I have to, right? Because I'm as a self-employed. I have to pay tax to America, even though I'm a Mexican citizen living in Mexico. I have nothing to do. It's insane. There's no way for me to get around it unless I work for someone, which now I'm working for myself. When I was working for someone, I had to pay 0% tax. But there were rumors, there were reports that Trump is going to do away with that rule for Americans living abroad having to pay tax. And also they just said he's going to lower the federal income tax. And I'm like, and when you read that, it's like your heartstrings are pulled. Like honestly, like when I read that, I was like, oh, it feels so good. And I'm like, but come on, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. He's not. How many times Obama's going to shut down Guantanamo, right? Yeah. Bush is not going to start no new wars. Let's go to Iraq, right? Let's just on and on it goes. So I do not believe it. I've been through this Stockholm syndrome. I was telling Steve Poikonen, like, how am I going to vote for the Republicans when they're the ones who brought in 9/11? And it was bipartisan, whatever. But they brought in 9/11 Patriot Act, which created the TSA, which created the DHS, which deplatformed me from PayPal, which is making my life harder. And it's just like, so for me to vote for them would be like Stockholm syndrome, And so, but I wanted to continue going around the world. Alexander Dugin, what does he say? I just think it's interesting to look at what the Russians say. He says, so we have won. That is decisive. The world will be never, ever like before. I'm sorry, Alexander. He says globalists have lost their final combat. The future is finally open. I am really happy. I kind of don't buy that. Dmitry Medvedev says Kamala is finished. Let her keep cackling infectiously. The objectives of the special military operation remain unchanged and will be achieved. And
that's true.
And I thought this was well. I have an Iran thing. But I guess before getting to the Iran war stuff, what you were saying, Mike, earlier, Russell Brand, New Age Gnostic stuff. So this is a clip two minutes. Should we do the whole 2 minutes? Russell Brand praying on election night.
Yeah, sure.
And I just find this off. There's no way in the world for me prayer is like a private thing.
Yeah.
I would
Look at
never,
the halo and the Jesus look.
I mean, in my
It's
life,
offensive.
I would never film myself publicly praying. Like I could just but here's Russell Brand again. Here we go.
Heavenly Father, Lord, please we ask. In fact, first let's start with some thanks. Thank you for the glory of creation. Thank you for the miracle of consciousness. Thank you for the ability to operate in the field of language. Thank you for relationship. Thank you that you are a triune God, that you are three gods in one personhood, three elemental forces, H2O frozen, H2O as vapor, H2O as liquid, one God in three forms. Heavenly Father, thank you for the relational component that shows us and teaches us that in relationship we can love one another. And even though it's very exciting to get caught up in the circus and pageantry of oppositionism and competition, Lord, may we remember that not only are all the people in America ultimately of one human family, all the people of the world are ultimately of one human family. And we ask, Lord Jesus, if you will be present with all of us tonight. Lord, even those that have not yet accepted you, we ask that they may feel your presence. And if indeed, Heavenly Father, you do conclude that this is to be a time of disruption and chaos, we would ask that beneath the chaos we might yet feel order. Lord, it feels so frequently that order merely rests upon chaos, that temporary human life rests upon death, that the city rests upon the rubble it will one day inevitably become. But though the temple may be reduced to rubble, it can be rebuilt in 3 days. Lord, I ask that we feel that the ultimate temple is the temple of our body, which ought and must be a dwelling place for you, Lord. I ask that you inhabit us individually and collectively, Lord, that even on a night like tonight that is about competition and measurement and power and the meeting out of power and the communication of power and the conduct of media and posturing and who can stand closest to the light and who gets the shine of the King, Lord, I ask that we remember that there is only one King, you, Lord Jesus Christ, and we ask for peace and harmony in your name. This we pray in your name. Amen. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit.
What about
I think if God got that on his voicemail, I'm pretty sure he pressed next within like 2 seconds of it, like boop.
And he got it wrong from the get-go. It's three persons and one God.
Yeah, he said 3 gods. No, well, maybe it wasn't a mistake, Monica.
No, right. Maybe it wasn't a mistake. You know, they have that satanic thing. It's like Jehovah, Lucifer, and Yahweh. Like they think it is 3 gods. Blech.
Well, it's there's a bit of one world in there, a little bit of order out of chaos phraseology, and I've talked before. E511 Ministries does some good work. I've discarded Donnie Darkin because he turned out to be a fraud recently. But Aaron in Writing is a great X account, and he's along these lines. He says, if Christians are to be deceived by the peace and safety offered under Antichrist, such a rallying cry must come from a generally trusted source. In our context, the right wing. He goes on, he says, you're about to witness a concurrent mass landslide right along with the presidential victory into kingdom dominion theology by myriads of professing Christians. From darkness to light is one of the most profound deceptions orchestrated by Satan himself to deceive the very elect, if possible. And he talks about kingdom dominion, which is the post-millennial view. I'm more like pre-millennial. I take the Bible more literally in its prophecy. But there's these people now in Christianity who want to bring heaven on earth by force, which from my view is not what the Bible is like talking Judas. About. We're supposed to be more apolitical. Just live your lives, be good, repentant Christians aware of our sins, preach the gospel socially, right? And not get too caught up in politics. But these people want to go full dominionist, theocratic, which is I think what he's saying, that this is the Satan's playbook. So yeah, those are most of my shares. Thoughts on that?
That was crazy. No, I think the thing with the whole religious element that they've brought into it is it's been very fast. That's one red flag, is like just how quickly they infused it. And it did come straight after the assassination attempt, right? You know, there was this immediate divine intervention narrative, and there was lots of propaganda around that, like photos of Trump with Jesus hugging him, and it was really weird. And then all of a sudden, you had these people step forward, like Russell Brand. Like that only happened in the past like 5-6 months, right? His conversion. And the thing I'd say about that is, okay, we know he's got a massive ego, but it doesn't strike me as normal that somebody would convert and then have such hubris that they would be baptizing other people. Like that to me was nuts. I mean, that's like going to the boxing gym twice and saying, right, I'm going to fight Mike Tyson or something. You know, it's crazy. It just doesn't strike me as normal. So I think there's something going on there. And for those of us that have kind of maybe followed this narrative over many years, it was always said that going into, you know, as things got more corrupt and going into, you could say, end times or towards that time where the world's getting increasingly corrupt, we would have false prophets and false messiahs, and the majority of Christians would be deceived. So I would say if you're on the side of the majority in terms of believing this stuff, then maybe that's the time to take a step back and say, wait a minute, am I being led somewhere? Am I being manipulated? Just reflect on those questions, because a lot of this is being fed to us. Remember, all of these narratives come through the screen. So that means they're almost certainly manipulated.
I can't help but feel that I was raised Catholic. I was away from the church for a long time. I returned to the church. I sent my kids to a pretty traditional, extremely traditional, small Catholic school that was basically run by homeschoolers, because although I was totally indoctrinated with like the Baltimore Catechism and my parents were super Catholic and they taught me all of the foundational principles, I didn't feel totally confident that I could impart that to my kids. And I felt even if they rejected religion or God or Catholicism later, that it was absolutely critical for them to have the foundation like from the beginning. I think I could be wrong about this, but I think the Epicureans, they kind of did away with the myths and they allowed, you know, their sensory indulgences, but they were totally ethical until they had kids who were raised without the myth. And then the kids were kind of debauched. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not, but that's what I was thinking. My husband was a convert, so he didn't have that foundational understanding. And I think when you do have that, it's kind of like really understanding the Bill of Rights, the Constitution. Ron Paul really tapped into that archetype, which I didn't even know people had other than me, except for when I was on the radio. And it just enlivened people. Of course, that's the zeitgeist, I think, that Trump hijacked. But so when I see this stuff, I can just hold it up and be like, that's not right. There's 3 persons in one God. Like I can just recognize that that's not right. And various things like I got somebody sent me an article by Vigano saying you have a moral obligation to vote and you have a moral obligation to vote for Trump. And then another article is many, many pages that laid out the Catholic foundation for the moral obligation to vote. But my uncle was a priest and he taught me from the beginning that you don't have a moral obligation to vote. I recognize that there were faulty assumptions in this thing, in the article. And my point is just that you have like Catholic converts and you have a lot of people who are falling for what seems to me a very superficial approach to reading what's going on here. And I don't understand that. I don't know what ignited that. Although I'm trying not to, I didn't mean to go on and on. I have a crazy quote from Irving Kristol from back in the day. He wrote it in the 90s. And it said, see if I still have it up. He said, this was 1993, Irving Kristol, Bill Kristol's father, who was part of PNAC, embracing the religious. He said, coping with the religious revival is something that conservatives and the Republican Party are not yet prepared to do. Religious people always create problems since their ardor tends to outrun the limits of politics in a constitutional democracy. But if the Republican Party is to survive, it must work at accommodating these people. In a sense, the influx of the religious into American politics is analogous to the influx of European immigrants into our urban centers between 1870 and 1914. They created many problems, but the Democrats welcomed them while the Republicans shunned them. That was the origin of the natural Democratic majority. The Democrats are never going to be able to welcome the religious, but if the Republicans keep them at arm's length instead of embracing them and shaping their political thinking, a third party and a restructuring of American politics are certain. One way or another, in the decades ahead, they will not be denied. So Irving Kristol was a neo-Trotskyite, and a lot of other things. He founded neoconservatism. That's what this book was about. And I feel like they made a concerted effort to shape that thinking. And I think it's secular in its origins in a way. And that's why it can respond to these secular prompts. Sorry, that was way longer than I meant it to be. But I want to understand it better.
I just added that I'm trying to consume as many, get up to speed on as many podcasts as I can. I listen like on double speed. I'm listening like all day. I was listening to Musk on Rogan, JD Vance on Rogan. Not because I particularly love these people, because I think this is what we need to do. We need to be listening. I got to be listening to Dugan. I got to be listening to Rogan, Musk, all the fringe, everything, and then getting it in and then figuring out what's going on. And JD Vance was talking about how he converted to Catholicism. And it's that trend, what you were talking about, Mike and Monica. It's kind of weird. And that made me think of my interview with J. Michael Waller, who was CIA. He went with worked with the Contras in the 80s. And in his book, he details, it's just wild that he said what the CIA was doing was crazy. And so they had to sort of work outside the law or the institutions. So he would go to a Catholic church, J. Michael Waller. He went to a Catholic church, and the head of the CIA, I forget who it was at the time, it was Casey or someone else. So he was instructed to go to this Catholic church in America. This is Sunday, whatever Sunday, and then it would be the CIA director. He'd walk right by him and whisper something to him, and it was his code name, which then when he went to Nicaragua with the Contras, he told them, and they were like, okay, this is our guy. And it's like, so there's this Vatican, Jesuit Catholic integration to the military intelligence, global deep states. Was it, Gladio, P2, all P2, this Masonic stuff. And so I think that plays a role into Vance, and so. I don't know I can't even keep track of everyone who's
Candace
converted.
Owen did it. Tony Blair, Newt Gingrich, all converted to Catholicism. It bums me out.
So I feel that's this global. Other people have written books more on this. I've visited
I had like 10 books on it.
Yeah, I was actually checking out. You have Alfred McCoy's book. I've got that. Yeah. You got Gary Webb's Dark Alliance there. I was looking at that. But I visited the Order of Malta's headquarters in Rome, which is not open. It's
the rarest passport. They have a passport.
Yeah, and I think they play a key role in this global deep states. And I did want to bring up the war topic. I don't know if you have any, before going to that, Mike, any thoughts on what we're talking about?
Yeah, no, I think that's a good place to move on. But before we do, just for a little bit of comedic relief, before we get into war, it might be a good time to drop this one. Did either of you see the video of Trump simulating a blowjob with his microphone the other day?
No. Is it real or like?
I'm going to show you. You can tell me what you
coming.
think. Okay. Let's share my screen. Okay, so this is this one's the one. I've got two. So I've got Trump, where this is one of the weird things based on what you guys were just talking about, which is Trump saying, "I'm not a Christian." Like, why do the Christians, follow somebody that is openly telling them they're not a Christian? So I'll just share this one with you first, because I'm sure you've seen it, but I found this one really funny, especially the way that he says it.
Can't hear it.
What's that, Monica?
Can't hear it.
Oh, okay. Let me just.
I was getting some noise. Yeah,
a little bit
after you played. Yeah.
Okay, more. Yeah, I'll just change the volume settings on here.
Maybe the volume on the actual little picture there, that doesn't look like it's maxed out, like on the actual screen within Twitter. Yeah.
Okay. Tell me if you can hear this now.
And Christians get out and vote just this time. You won't have to do it anymore. 4 more years, you know what? It'll be fixed. It'll be fine. You won't have to vote anymore, my beautiful Christians. I love you, Christians. I'm a Christian. I love you. Get out. You got.
Just the way he drops it in there. I'm not a Christian.
But it's weird. You know, when I heard that the first time, it sounded like he said, I'm a Christian. But then I guess everyone says he says, I'm not.
Can we hear it again?
You know, it could be Twilight language, though. Sometimes they say something and they slip it in and they want you to believe it, but your conscience knows what they really said. Let's try one more time, actually. It's interesting that you said that.
Christians, I love you, Christians. I'm a Christian. I love
Interesting. Well, that's on the fence. So listeners, please let us know what you think. But yeah, unfortunately, listeners, if you haven't got the video to this, you're not going to see Donald Trump trying to suck off a microphone. But for those that do, I'm going to share this one. I don't know. You tell me what you guys think. It's a very strange movement that he does here.
What? What the heck?
I can't believe that's real.
Let me play it again. So he actually, he kind of like rubs the microphone and then...
But that's just a stand,
He's
right? He's
literally
holding the mic.
stroking it.
Yeah, he's holding the mic. I've watched the full clip. He's complaining about the height of the microphone stand, but I don't know why you would pair these actions.
Stroke it
of
and bob
hand
your
and
head.
mouth.
That's what he's doing.
I know, and of course, like there's the whole thing about Kamala and what was his name, Willie Brown, the guy who she supposedly was in relations with. So I was wondering if that's why he did it, but I'll play it one more time. Let's look.
Yeah, this is amazing. That's so disturbing. Oh my gosh.
So there you go. So I don't know what that was all about, but that just feeds again into this whole, it's been the weirdest election I've ever seen. And I think if you watch Hollywood films, then this kind of maybe is normalized. But for somebody like me, I haven't seen a Hollywood film in about 15 years and I don't have a TV and I only watch like documentaries or podcasts. So when I see this like election stuff going on, like the McDonald's, and was he driving a garbage truck recently or something as well?
Yeah, that was teed up by Biden. Biden made some comment about his listeners being garbage, and like the next day he's got a garbage truck, like the garbage men come out. That's a huge union, or I don't know the details, but you could just see it was teed up because I do feel like the Democrats wanted him to win, and if they do, then. I mean, it was weird that he said you never have to vote again. That's kind of, sounds like a little Caesar-like or Hitler-like, like there's no more voting. But also, if there is more voting, then in 2028, the Democrats might have a clear field to have 8 years, be the legitimate party guy. And, that's really funny, 69.9%.
Yeah, there was this one too by Elon Musk, which was an interesting one. It kind of feeds into some of these narratives people have been suggesting that Donald Trump is actually a part of this conspiracy to help bring about some Antichrist. And Donald Trump had 69.9% of the vote. So of course there's 3 6s there, 699. And Elon Musk
10. I don't know. I don't know the number stuff. I love math, but I don't understand the numerology.
Well, there's the 3 6s, I guess. So in the sense of the Antichrist, which is the number is meant to be 3 6s, then Elon Musk tweeted, which I thought this was the important part. It was the prophecy has been fulfilled. And I thought, well, that's a really strange way of writing about that. So that was the other thing that I thought on that. But ultimately, listen, if I was American and I could suspend my disbelief, I'd be voting Trump, because what you're going to do, you're screwed if you do, you're screwed if you don't. Yeah. But as somebody that, But
Mike, I want to know what you think about why this huge movement of Christians are seeing this so differently from how we're seeing it.
Yeah, well, I don't know about that, but I guess in terms of like their personal belief structure, I think today it's like most things, we've had it hijacked by these mainstream meme type culture. It's like a meme, like everything we do is somehow hijacked and has become a pastiche, and it's not authentic anymore. Even our relationships are not authentic because we grew up watching things like Friends, for example, and people think that's how people live. And I think it's very hard to separate ourselves from the culture that we're in. So yeah, it looks, this whole shooting of the year, like it did look miraculous. And, I guess for me, I'm a strong pessimist. And like, for me, I also think as well, like if you have your faith wrapped up in institutions, that's probably a dangerous thing too, because, your faith should be personal. Like you can go to church and you can have community, but there should be your faith shouldn't be aligned completely with that. You should have your own separate faith that you take with you to the institution if you go there, and then you take it out with you, but it's not theirs, it's yours. And I think a lot of Christians, unfortunately, it's like anything, there's top-down messaging that comes through the church. So like, you mentioned that bishop or whoever he was saying, vote for Trump. It's this is your spiritual duty, and that's abhorrent, right? Of course,
because you couldn't know his heart. He was saying one person's heart is black and the other person's heart is sincere. It's like, you don't, I can tell that's not true. So how could you possibly know what's in his heart? Like, it didn't even make sense doctrinally. And I just thought, how do people not see that that isn't even in keeping with his own, professed, dogma.
It's like, but in America, you've got something that you don't really get outside of America, which is Christian Zionism. Like Poland's a Catholic country, but nobody has that here. But in America, that's a huge thing.
I heard that, and I don't know if it's true or not, but that was embraced by evangelicals and such because it gives them a direct connection to the Old Testament without having to go through the Catholic Church. So it basically gets to skip from the Reformation back. I mean, I don't know if that's true or not, but that's why Catholics don't do it, but Reformation post-Catholic.
All right, okay.
What do you think about that, Pervoye? Could that be possible?
Well, I think there's some psyop with the Christian Zionist element, and I was going to say in the past few days or weeks, I've seen clips of people bringing Trump into the evangelical churches. Like there was a clip of they were bringing a little boy,
like an idol,
was dressed in a suit, like pretending to be Trump, and it said MAGA, and they were pulling it into the front of the church. And I'm just like, and then Mike Huckabee was in some church in America where they built a replica of the Wailing Wall in Israel. For me, this is like idolatry. This is am I supposed to? And there were people like at this fake replica wall, like praying to it. I'm like, okay, you're making idols again. Like,
and isn't Jesus the Messiah?
Right, and I have nuance here. Aaron in writing, he made a tweet the other day again because there's a strain of evangelicals that are more amillennial and say people who believe in Christ are Israel. In a sense, I agree, but I also think there's a lot of literal things that they just throw out the door. And Aaron in writing, he says, why is Jesus bodily returning to Israel if Israel has no eschatological significance? Like, that's a good point. So there is importance to the existence of Israel today and Jews. But again, there's this spectrum where the Christian Zionists are like, let's just kill tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of Christian Palestinians and even not Christian Palestinians who have done nothing wrong. And that is not, then you have the set of Christian Zionists who are completely okay with that. They're like, hey, no problem, because Israel and prophecy. And I'm like, no, Israel today is rebellious. They've rejected Christ,
right?
But that doesn't mean God won't ultimately in the last days redeem a portion of Jews in Israel and Israelites today. And same thing for each of us as individual sinners. And so,
I think that's a good segue. It's a good segue to where you wanted to go next, Monica, which was to war. And we know that Israel, of course, has got a very obedient servant in Trump, I would say. He's given them a blank check. He's written them a blank check and said, I will be your biggest supporter. And they openly say that too, that we want Trump. So he was the man for Israel. And we've also, over there, where you in Hawaii, we do have a Jewish Mexican president. We've got a Jewish Argentinian. He just fired his finance minister and he changed the swearing in ceremony. Did you hear about this? So he fired the finance minister because his own party actually voted to remove the embargo on Cuba. And of course, America were outraged at this. So as a retaliation to his own party, which shows me that Argentina, they've got some discord internally now. This Milei thing's not working out, I don't think. But he fired his finance minister and then he replaced her with a new finance minister who's Jewish. And he changed the swearing in ceremony. So it had the Torah involved, which was unprecedented. That's never happened before. We've also got over in Britain, actually, Keir Starmer, his wife's Jewish, and they have a Jewish family. So you've got really all of the deck. I would say, look at it this way. We've got the deck stacked for Israel to do something major if they want to, especially now Trump's in power. So I'll hand it back to you, Monica. What are they going to do with that array of characters? Oh, is it Roy? Sorry, Roy. You take this one.
I'm happy to talk.
I literally just looked. It's just so funny. I looked on that on the feeds right now. It just came published. Benjamin Netanyahu calls Trump's election victory history's greatest comeback. Your historic return to the White House offers a new beginning for America and a powerful commitment to the great alliance between Israel and America. And again, let me share my screen because this is what I wanted. I thought this was important that has been missing with all the election hubbub. I'm not sure if I'm sharing with this sound. Let me bring that back. Okay, yeah, it is. It has to do with Iran. So everything you just said, Mike, stars have aligned for Israel. Netanyahu. I just tweeted that out, and so I came across this clip, and the description says. In Iran, a student harassed by her university's morality police over her improper hijab didn't back down. She turned her body into a protest, stripping to her underwear and marching through campus. This is in Iran, defying a regime that constantly controls women's bodies. Her act is a powerful reminder of Iranian women's fight for freedom. Yes, we use our bodies like weapons to fight back a regime that kills women for showing their hair. This happened at Tehran's Science and Research University. She has since been arrested by authorities. Be her voice. # woman, life, freedom. Latest reports that I saw was that she was whisked off to a mental asylum. Iranian regime said she went crazy. And that doesn't mean she that's what they would do. But so I'll just play the clip real quick. She's walking around in her underwear at university in Iran.
یه گرفتم دیگه به اندازه کافی اونایی که فقط اونجا وایسادن سفیده رفته اونجا دهن سرویس بهتری زاویه رو داره
All right, so what I thought was interesting here, this appears to be the video. It's got 18.7 million views. That seems to be the account with the most views of this video. It's published by Masih Alinejad. And this was just November 2nd, a couple days ago. Who is Masih Alinejad? Iranian journalist, activist, president of the World Liberty Congress. You go to their website. So I tweeted out, from their website, their partners are National Endowment for Democracy, Freedom House, yada,
National Endowment
yada.
for Democracy is a CIA front or whatever.
Right, I'm going to show you this other graphic for people watching. Alliance of Democracies, that's linked to like NATO. And so it's this
Freedom
Iranian
House.
activist is a total front from NATO, Color Revolution. And this was published like 15 plus years ago, U.S. Interference Network for people watching. It really shows the network. So the CIA used to run regime change in the late 80s, 90s. They realized they can't do it so overtly. They created a plethora, a spider web of countless NGOs, which are fronts for the CIA operations, which run regime change, undemocratic, totalitarian, coup d'etat regime change. And so you have USAID, CIA financing National Endowment for Democracy. National Endowment for Democracy itself has 4 sub institutions: International Republican Institute, National Democratic Institute for International Affairs, Center for International Private Enterprise, American Center for International Labor Solidarity. And so these guys, they're like Matryoshka dolls, those Russian dolls.
Yeah,
they create so many cutouts of cutouts of cutouts, and then these will either set up shop in foreign countries or they will finance NGOs in these foreign countries, like I came across in Kazakhstan. And then they're linked to Freedom House, which also finances this lady's World Liberty Congress, Albert Einstein Institute, Open Society. And then they will finance, provide the financing, training, logistics, media coverage to these activists in these target countries like Iran. And so my point here is, isn't it interesting I can stop my share now. Isn't it interesting the time? And that was being retweeted. I saw some people who retweeted that video. Richard Branson, right? Billionaire. And you can probably guess all these liberal globalist mainstream figures, media, activism, musicians, billionaires. And it's just like, let's couple that then with, wasn't it J.D. Vance who said he was okay with war? I think on Iran, Mike Pompeo coming in, Trump saying Iran trying to assassinate him, the Shah of Iran, his son, right now.
Oh, yeah.
He was at NatCon, the conservative, main NatCon, like a month or two ago.
What did he say?
He was basically saying, look, we need to get rid of the regime in Iran. I'd be happy to be the president,
I just bought his dad's book. I was like, if anybody's going to tell the truth.
After what we talked about last time, you'll have to let me know if it's
I'll let you know if it's worthwhile.
Worth the read.
Yeah.
But my point is,
I watched all of his interviews after you two guys mentioned him, and
and I started playing them on my show.
He was brilliant.
He was such a
totally
statesman. I mean,
interested in that
I'm
guy.
not admiring him, but he was obviously so educated. I have to find out if maybe I would admire him, but he was so well spoken.
You
just
can
don't get that
admire
anymore.
his candor and his fluency. And,
He was not
his
afraid.
Diplomacy. Yeah, he had balls for sure.
He had
and
the support of his
sadly,
people.
He got killed, I think, didn't he?
Yeah, probably. He had a horrible cancer.
he
and we
died
wouldn't
of,
let him come
he
home.
was in the U.S. He was let in for cancer treatment and then he died. But I guess my final point, just before giving it to you guys, it just seems Trump came out and said he's going to, I think in his election last night, it's like 2 or 3 in the morning, he said he's going to end wars. But I just have a feeling he's going to be the man to lead us for war, because you need someone more competent like a Trump administration, not Kamala or Biden, to take us to war. Number one, logistically and administratively, to take us to war. Number two, to get buy-in from conservative patriots who are going to be the cannon fodder for these wars. And then, so I think, and you already mentioned with Israel, so I just feel like we will be going to war, and Trump will be like, look, I didn't want to go to war, but look what happened. Some stuff is going to be happening. And again, this clip is funny. It just came out, coupled with Pahlavi's son saying, hey, make me president of Iran. And so you guys' thoughts.
Well, I'm happy to just comment on, I agree with you that I feel like, yes, a war is not prosecuted by committee. It's not really a democratic thing to do, which is why empire is unconstitutional for us. We can't have a government of, by, and for the people when it comes to war, because that takes secrets and, you can't really do a good job of it if you're actually asking people to consent to it, because by its very nature, violating other people's sovereignty and stuff, you just don't have that right. You don't have the authority. So yeah, it has to take somebody who doesn't really care what the party says, whatever. But throughout the night, as I noticed, like the Senate, I believe it's clear that the Senate is going to be Republican, right? Is that not true? And that the Congress so Trump's Republicans will control the Senate and make gains in the House. But I don't know for sure. It's not crystal clear how the Congress is going to shake out, but the Supreme Court also is conservative leaning. And I feel like to the extent that you do need financing, I mean, obviously a declaration of war is something they don't do anymore, but I feel like a unified Republican government, even if, that's another paradox about the Christianity, the religion, is that they of course, you can't have violence, you can't kill, you can't steal. So they have to couch it in terms of self-defense. That's tricky. They did that with 9/11. They tried to make it seem defensive by saying we were attacked on our soil. Now I feel like they're saying, I saw a clip from Sarah Palin many, many, many years ago, before she was even tapped as vice president, as governor of Alaska, saying in a church, this war, the Iraq war, is from God. That was a quote. This war is from God. And I don't understand how they can possibly make that sound right. But the fact is, I think people will feel like some religious zeal, especially since we're talking about Israel, with whom they feel a religious connection, like a profound religious connection.
I think you've both hit the nail on the head there. Yeah, they're going to pair this religiosity that they've created around it And Trump might be given something like, let's say, the Ukraine and Russia war. If they're already planning to wind that down, they could give him that to make it seem as though he's the one who helped make that happen. So he gets a victory and people say, yeah, look, he's anti-war. Then you mentioned there that America usually gets dragged into a war with an event. So yeah, for sure, we could see some kind of event and attack on America. And also, if you pair that with the attack on Israel, then you've got the religious element too, and you've got Muslims versus Jews, and the Christians are being attached to the Jews, and it would be a tinderbox, right? Because in Europe we've got a large Muslim population as well, lots of migrants who have been placed all across Europe. We've still got Christians as well and churches. So yeah, I could see this getting really messy here, Roy. What do you think? Do you think that is going to spill out into Europe too? I really hope it doesn't go down that path. That's the worst case scenario for a Trump presidency. I think if that doesn't happen, then Trump actually will look, for all intents and purposes, and probably do some good for America over the next 4 years in the limited capacity that he has as a president. But if it does go down that path, then I think everyone loses, and it doesn't matter what else he does. If we all end up at war with Iran, I think that's a third world war. So I really hope it doesn't go down that path.
I think they might wind down Ukraine to focus more on the Middle East as things explode there. But Moldova was just eaten by EU. There was an article recently. You might see the Ukraine war expand into Moldova and Transnistria. So it's really hard to say, because I could see the globalists, they have different strategic plans, and they could expand Ukraine, Moldova, Transnistria, and then all bets are off. They could wind Ukraine down and really start World War III with Iran and Israel, which ties to what we're saying before, the religious eschatological elements, right? And then it seems like they will be going to war with China closer to 2030. So it could be one of those, two of those, or all three. But I am looking more interestingly at this religious element. Every week on my paid subscriber analysis, it's like almost not a week goes by now where something is not happening on the Temple Mount with Al-Aqsa, right? Just this week there were further disturbances, and so yeah, I feel like maybe not. Hopefully not. Maybe Trump does end these wars, but there could be false flag operations. And Trump will be like, he's pro-defense establishment, And so, and if we're seeing so much money go behind Trump now, big tech, JD Vance, Wall Street, the defense establishment, who better than Trump to do the whole rah-rah America bombs away? And what Monica was saying earlier, I was thinking, it was in the last decades, modern American history, it's been the Republican establishment that's launched these wars, right? The whole Bush global war on terror, this would just be a continuation of that. And we know, we may have talked about this before, Wesley Clark, Iran is the final shoe to drop.
Yeah, the last of the 7 countries.
Yeah. I don't think we can avoid it. I think by hook or by crook, they're going to take care of Iran.
Yeah, my amazement.
Go ahead, Monica.
The majority of people said the number one thing that they hoped for and wanted from Trump was that he is less likely to bring us to World War III. I was just shocked by that.
Wow. Yeah, I remember Trump in his first presidency, he was the one who put all the sanctions on Iran. He actually ended the treaty that they had, which was so that Iran wouldn't escalate their nuclear program, and in return, they'd get sanctions taken off them, whereas Trump ended that and he put a ton of sanctions on them. And of course, what you said last month, about him saying Israel should bomb the nuclear facilities, and it's all of this very escalatory rhetoric. So I just don't see a way of avoiding this. If Israel want it, that's where it's going to go. And conservative Americans will be brought along for the ride. And yeah, that's why I always said that Trump was the guy, because you couldn't have anyone else do that. So not looking forward to that. And I think, going back to what you said, Roy, if they do wind down the Ukraine conflict, it's temporary for sure, because Europe is going to be, it's being remilitarized as we speak. And I think maybe 3-4 years, Europe will be full of new weapons. And then, they could be used in a much bigger conflict involving China. So we're still on the road to war, listeners, unfortunately. And I don't think we're escaping that. But Monica, you got more
And
to say
I think
on
there
this
is like an end game feel to it. I think, yeah, like he did also assassinate Soleimani, and I believe admitted it, or it was very clear. Because what I noticed, so we had Joe Rogan, I have a list here, Ron Paul, Tucker Carlson, Alex Jones, Jordan Peterson, Russell Brand. I believe they all came out for Trump, Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, everybody. So they fired all of their guns at once. Anybody who, and I always say, like, people like, how can you think Tucker Carlson is a limited hangout or controlled opposition? I mean, obviously in our circles, that's obvious. But, my mom, my brother, a lot of these people, Ron Paul, I'm like, why? Now, he obviously had a stroke, like he's paralyzed on half his face. He's 89. Like whatever he said, I just was like, I don't care. But that all the guns are fired at once, they're never going to be able to use those assets again. So this is it. Whatever it's all about, whatever it's all for, it's now. And it seems like war with Iran was the thing. And it was the Republicans always, Democrats aren't a peace party. They're doing Ukraine. But the Republicans always threatened about war with Iran. They're going to have nukes. I don't even understand why Iran is the target. The only thing I can possibly think of is that it's a bookend of the Middle East and you can just level the whole damn place, and that they do want to restructure it. And I was just stopped over in Seoul, Korea, my Asian tour, and I was reminded of something I noticed in Frankfurt also. You have a war that flattens a place. Every building is new, or every building is from that era. The building that goes on when you have really destroyed the infrastructure of a place, it's almost as if they have a lot of bombs they want to sell. They've got to use them, re-inventory, and then they got a lot of Halliburtons, they got a lot of building companies. They just need to great reset the entire, earth, so that they can build it back better, and all I mean by that is they need to sell more crap. If the broken window theory works, if it's not your window.
Fantastic rant. They want to do Pan Am districts, Hunger Game districts, and I've talked to, I think before I mentioned this on our last roundtable, that they have a plan for a EU, NATO-like Middle Eastern Union.
Yes.
So,
yes.
And it's funny. I was reading NEOM, the number one smart city project in the world, which is Saudi Arabia's NEOM. It's only going to be 1% of its projected size, and
good.
Tens of thousands of people have died. And I've been wondering, like, have the global elites already been hunting humans in the Maze Runner in smart city in NEOM? And so that's probably what it comes down to. But yeah, I'm pretty much all out of those are most of my thoughts on the whole Trump stuff. And yeah,
I think so too. I mean, ultimately, it at some point comes down to, can they not go to war? Can they afford not to? Because the financial system is in such a state, and they needed COVID. Like, COVID didn't happen. COVID was needed, and it came just in time to bail out the system one more time. We've come to the end of that. All of that money, all of that inflation, it's worse. People are struggling. The economy is in dire straits, and they're going to need a stimulus wave of money far greater than COVID. And that can only come with a major narrative. So if not war, where will it come from? Ultimately, that's why I always go back to. It's the financial system, and all of these crises because of that. It's because of the debt-based system. So unless that can be solved, which we know it can, they're going to have to kick the can down the road. And that leads me to think there's going to be a big crisis. And I don't know what it is, but unfortunately, all signs do point to war. So yeah, let's watch this space.
I just have a quick question for you guys. Two big things that I've been worried about, for a long time: more of the health lockdown or climate lockdowns. Do you guys feel like those elements get put way on the back burner because war, or what happens to those things, which were going to be big global levers?
I still fear that coming in. I don't know when or how, but it could be just like last time with COVID, where it's quiet, it's 2024, 2025. 2026. And then, bam, something comes, and then like you wake up the next morning, something's happened. And here in Mexico, it's like, oh, you can't enter. You have to download the QR code with the digital apps. And it's just kind of like, I feel like they could do that again. And war could also be used for, rationing. The financial system went down. Now we all got to download that. It's going to be like, download the app to do this. And if you don't, you're going to starve. Too bad. Like the government's just going to be like, you're going to see lines, and it's going to be like, you got to download the app to do this.
Yeah.
And you're already seeing this in different parts of the world, even here in Mexico, where like, they're pushing you to download. What was it? The world's coin, orb. Look to your orb for the warning. Monster magnet.
I don't know this.
They've opened a headquarters in Mexico City, and at Rappi, which is like the Uber Eats in Mexico. Like every day I see Rappi drivers passing on motorcycles, people ordering their foods. Like it's crazy. And Rappi made a deal with WorldCoin, Sam Altman's WorldCoin, where now they're going to be deploying in retail shops in Mexico the orb. And you'll even be able to order an orb to your house to scan your soul, to scan your eyes. And like this is the crap that's happening now. And I could see them deploy that eventually. They want to do it. And you mentioned COVID was one context for that. War could be another, because COVID was like a war simulation.
Yes, totally. Yeah.
And I had a Kit Knightley of Off Guard in him. He was talking about this. Mm-hmm. It's the same stuff. Like whether it's fake pandemic, or is that going to get us into trouble?
You're right.
War, it's both is rationing, both is free speech elimination, because you can't criticize the war, you can't criticize COVID, and so on and on.
Right, voluntary
but this war as well has that really powerful element in that most nations are completely split, right? Because you've got the left who are totally anti what's going on with this genocide, so they're going to be totally against the war, and I don't think you're going to get them supporting a war with Iran. And then you've got the conservative right who will get dragged along. There you've got your civil war narrative. And if you have a few choice events, now you can start to do all of that social control and authoritarianism, which will be cheered on, I think, by the right if they engineer it correctly. And Trump's already mentioned the national ID at the border. So there you've got your technocracy. Trump, good friends with, this is a funny one. I remember looking at a YouTube video it was a Twitter video just the other day saying BlackRock tried to kill Trump. And I'm like, BlackRock? I'm like, Larry Fink managed Donald Trump's money for about a decade.
A week ago, BlackRock just bought shares in Trump Media, BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street.
Yeah,
wow.
they're really good.
He's got to cash out.
There's talk of Larry Fink actually being put in as secretary of the Treasury, which would be wild. Imagine BlackRock in control of the Treasury, which could happen because they're very close friends, Fink and Trump. So who knows? But I think you're going to see technocracy, and it's going to come in through Silicon Valley, and then at some point it will be applied via the state because of internal crisis and chaos. And Europe's way ahead of you guys on that, so we're screwed.
Can I give you one more little tidbit? I want to keep you guys, but something that I want to let you know. Let me give you a heads up. I was looking at the committee that was evaluating the Secret Service's response to the assassination, or whatever, like the Secret Service failure at the assassination attempt in Pennsylvania. And they made recommendations of how to restructure the Secret Service. And they said they did, I think, 3 things that caught my eye. One is to put all the different departments of the Secret Service really just reporting to the one main guy. That Secret Service should be interoperative with every 2 years doing practices with every local police force. Not every place where somebody was going to go, but they should already be interoperative with every police force. And that it should be controlled from somebody outside the Secret Service. And I was thinking like Eric Prince or a mercenary situation. And that's your national police force, in my opinion. That's what I'm worried about there. And I feel like if you're going to bring in the pro-Palestinian protesters as the civil unrest element at the same time as you have a war, then you've got that crackdown that you can kind of command and control, but you use your locals will do it. And again, the right is super pissed at the Secret Service for letting Trump down. So they're not going to say, "Oh, we made a huge mistake. We didn't really want these reforms." So I'm not trying to be doom and gloom. I just feel like that's something to keep an eye out because I didn't hear anybody talking about it.
No, I think that sounds perfect. And I just have one more thought
There's a lot going
and
on.
screen share. Here it is. This is a book. So I've interviewed Marin Katusa. He's a Canadian Croatian, and I interviewed him about 10 years ago. 11 Skyped him into my class here in Mexico, but it wasn't recorded. It was sort of a poor call quality. But he wrote this book, The Rise of America: Remaking the World Order. Santiago Capital, that's Brent Johnson. He follows me on X. He's this well-known investor figure, and he's bullish on America and the dollar. And he says, if you have not already done so, this would be a good time to read this book. And if the title triggers you, you should read it twice. So I am also entertaining this idea. As much as my podcast was born out of the thought of American decline. What if, America, as the title says, it's the rise of America, because America gave birth to world government. I mean, the British and the Americans. And they're the ones sort of molding the world into the world government. And so it's good for devil's advocate. You might not want to have America decline because it is the mentor. What do you call it? The nurses when the kid in Spanish, I know, doula. Doula, like
the
that helps
nanny.
the baby.
Oh, the doula,
born.
the midwife.
The midwife. Like America is the midwife for world government. And so if you're a globalist, you wouldn't want to destroy necessarily America. You would want to destroy the traditional, values which they've been trying to do, and maybe its economic might for the multipolar world government world. But I just have that thought that maybe we might see crazy, like bullish. So if Bitcoin goes, they might back the dollar with Bitcoin. They might remake, like it'll be a years of like, wow, amazing stuff happening. So they're going to amaze us into world government. So I think that's also
we foster the illusion of liberty and freedom. Like democracy is the opiate of the masses. That's why I said democracy is the opiate of the masses. And we have the Constitution stuff. We are the ones people look to think that this is, there is freedom, there is liberty. We have the Constitution stuff. I think they keep that propped up, but of course it's totally gutted.
I think what you'll see is that bifurcation. So America will rule the western part, China and BRICS will have their own separate bit. But I think internally, America, just look at any major city, Medicare and Social Security is going to run out in 2030. So time's running out. I think we'll see internal collapse in terms of the standards of living, but you will still have the appearance of global leadership. So I'm kind of, Marin Katusa and Brent, they are totally bullish on the US. Brent Johnson's the dollar milkshake guy. He thinks the dollar's going to destroy all the other currencies, but I think gold's going to destroy all the currencies. And maybe we could end it with a little clip as well. So I'll give you both your final thoughts, and then we could just maybe actually lead out with this clip because I think it's a nice way to end this one. It's basically talking about, listen, guys, all listeners who are listening to this, whatever your take on the election is, and you should all have your own unique take. I think that's an extremely healthy thing to do. Ultimately, we're still alive. We've got things to do. We've got families. And I think we've all got, experience of what politicians do in those 4 years. It generally doesn't change our lives for the better that much. It might, nudge us a little bit in a better direction. If, for example, you get some lower income tax, hooray. I hope you do, my friend. I hope I do too. But, that's the best we can hope for. But we can also, do a lot over the next 4 years in terms of getting ourselves ready for all of these crazy times at home. So that's what I will lead us out with. But Monica, your final words on this one, anything you want to add?
At this point, my only hope is that the powers that be, who seem clearly to be in control, aren't suicidal, and that they actually want to keep some buildings standing. They want to keep, some humanity in existence, that they're not actually trying to nuke the entire world at once. How they plan to reshape it, that scares me, but I can't live in total fear. Although I've had some comments saying like, there is no hope, but again, I just feel like you've got to save your soul and carry on and plan as if there will be a future that, our children can somehow navigate. That's all I got for you. And, but don't smoke the Kool-Aid.
Right? Anything you want to add?
I guess we'll close with your clip of my final thought is, I had a guest on recently, Dave Dubai said, embrace the chaos. And so, I mean, people, I don't even like bringing up anymore the black pill thing. But again, I mentioned before, I actually feel lately I've been getting more forward thinking. I've been thinking more long term, and I've been big. I'm generally very content person and happy, and I'm getting more optimistic. Where even though I feel things will be getting worse, I'm actually getting happier and optimistic. And part of that is because I'm just focusing on in my immediate life, on my immediate local life. Things are good. I'm very content. And so whatever is happening out there is happening and shouldn't affect me so much. And, I still get people sending me these wacky emails that are fear porn. And I'm just like, delete, guys, come on, embrace the chaos. And so that's my final thought. I'm getting even more content and happy despite everything that's going on.
Yeah, I'm totally the same, guys. Yeah, me too. Like we spent about an hour chasing chickens around the garden at night because they all escaped. And yeah, like I really enjoy life and I love life. And I think sometimes people think that if you show some intellectual honesty around politics, that you're a black pill. It's like, no, that's actually the white pill, is realizing that that's not going to fix it. And if you keep going through that cycle of believing it's going to fix it, you'll not take action at home and take responsibility. Whereas, you can vote, but I would say really focus over these next, 6 months to a year on what you can do at home, and your life will get better. Like, that's always a winner. So anyway, that's what the final clip is that we're going to play out with. So I'm just going to share this one with you. I don't know who this is. It's a woman that I found on Twitter, but I liked kind of her sentiment. So I'll share this one. And yeah, thanks so much. Shall we do our goodbyes now or afterwards? What do you reckon?
Let's do that now. By the way, that's Rachel. What's her name? I forget it. No, Gary Wedler, something like that. She's part of the Independent Media Alliance. But yeah, I guess people can check out all of our websites. Links are in the description. And I guess we'll see people in the next either Q&A or a roundtable. They can just follow our websites for that info.
Should we run around and say what those are? I'm Monica Perez saying goodbye. You can find all my stuff on the Monica Perez Show favorite podcasting platform. That's my handle on Twitter and my URL, monicaperezshow.com. All of that. Thank you very much. Thanks.
You'll find me by putting in Parallel Mic anywhere. I don't think there's another Parallel Mic out there, so just stick that in a search engine. But parallelmic.com and YouTube Parallel Systems.
Geopoliticsandempire.com.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much, guys. It's been another fantastic show, and we're going to play out with this woman. Who was it, Hawaii, that you said she was called?
Carrie Wedler, I think.
Carrie Wedler. Here we go.
Breaking election news. No one is coming to save you. Not him or her. Not even him. Not her. And definitely not him or him. Despite the rhetoric, platitudes, and grandstanding of power chasers, if any of these people genuinely intended to save you or even could, they'd already be dead. But why do so many people feel they need a politician to save them in the first place? Because things are so bad. But how did they get so bad? People have been voting for politicians to save them for generations, and for lesser evils almost as long. And after all that, we got this dumpster fire. How are politicians going to save you from the messes they created? Yep, that includes this guy too. Despite the years of programming we all received that voting is our voice and makes us free, the opposite is true. We're indoctrinated to believe it's the most effective way to make a change, usually to fix problems the government created. And in participating, we choose masters for others and call it representation. We're conditioned to believe we can't do it ourselves and have to outsource it to others who know better than us, and that doing so is, quote, taking action, which has resulted in an ever-encroaching imperial police surveillance state that impoverishes and insults the people it, quote, represents and serves. Some people think acknowledging this means I'd rather do nothing, but pointing out the illegitimacy of the system is not apathetic or defeatist. It's required to start pulling ourselves out of this hellhole and start taking responsibility for ourselves, not outsourcing it to documented criminals and megalomaniacs who seek seek authority over others. The real defeatism and apathy is tolerating the meager options the system gives you and playing along with their game. And the more you fixate on politics and what political puppet takes the throne, the less energy you have to actually do something. It's on you to take care of your health and well-being, which would be a lot better off if the government hadn't been subsidizing filth and declaring it safe for decades, and the political machine didn't keep you gripped in a perpetual state of fear and reactivity. It's on you to take care of your own survival, which would be a lot easier if you weren't forced to pay a litany of taxes, including inflation taxes, and burdened by the trillions in debt your quote representatives take on in your name. It's on you to make this system obsolete by demanding better for yourself. You can mean you as an individual or as communities you choose to be a part of. But in either case, we must become less reliant materially, emotionally, and spiritually on powerful, corrupted institutions and authority figures. And we doesn't mean the euphemism for a tiny ruling class. That's a figment of imagination and propaganda to placate the masses. No politician or government is coming to save you. And the sooner we as individuals and communities recognize this, the sooner we can come up with actual solutions and actually save ourselves, which is a lot more effective than perpetually voting for evil to stop evil and being shocked that evil remains in power.